प्रभु ना दर्शन करता
ओम नमो हरिहंताणम
सिद्ध प्रभु ना दर्शन करता
ओम नमो सिद्धाणम
आचार्यों ने वंदन करता
ओम नमो आयर्याणम
उपाध्याय ने वंदन करता
ओम नमो उपध्यायाणम
सर्व साधु ने वंदन करता
नमो लोये सब साहूणम
सम्यक दर्शन मुझने मर्जो
तेसो पंचन मुक्तारो
सम्यक ज्ञान मुझने मर्जो
सौवा पाप परासनो
सम्यक चारित्र मुझने मर्जो
मंगलानं च सर्वेषु
नवपदनी आराधना करता
परमं अभय मंगलम परमं अभय मंगलम परमं अभय मंगलम.
Good evening, everyone, and Jai Jinendra. Welcome to Enabling Network's fourth session. As you know, the series that we're running is titled Living Beyond Barriers. And the last session we had was a chat with the siblings of persons with disabilities. And it was the siblings who felt that it was very important for the parents to look at care options for their brothers and sisters, not only for the now, but for future as well. So like planning of the care options. Now, this prompted us at Enabling Network to host this webinar on care provisions, which we hope will be helpful to all of you that have joined us today. And if you haven't watched the previous webinars, and if you would like to watch them, they are available on Oshwal YouTube channel. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our panel of speakers today. We have two speakers. The first person I'm introducing you to will be Sarita. Sarita, would you like to share a little bit of information about yourself, please?
Yeah, good evening, Jai Jinendra, everybody. My name is Sarita Shah, Rajesh Shah, sorry. And I am a mother of two young adults now in their 30s with physical disabilities. Their condition is related to genetic condition, and both of them are in a wheelchair. And I love this topic because I've been using the service for carers for last 25 years, and I'd like to share my story and my journey with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarita. That's very generous. Next, I'd like to introduce Vishal. Vishal, please tell us about yourself.
Namaste, Jai Jinendra. Firstly, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part of this discussion, a very important discussion, and one I hope that will continue and actually continue to spread more in terms of awareness about what is available in terms of care and care options. I, over the past almost 2 decades now, have worked within, in and around social health and social care. I started my journey within that working for some larger providers of care. So in fact, a couple of platforms that started with 88 care homes, for example, across the country, to growing to as many as 160 care homes across Scotland, England, and Wales. I've also moved out of there and set up my own platform as well, and providing care at home, particularly around supporting those who are older in that community, but also expanding that to supporting those with learning disabilities, as well as those with other sort of cognitive impairments, as well as support around neurological conditions as well. But that's also brought into more specific dementia care services that we've run over the years. But also that more recently sort of focused on how technology can also help and support people living with care and requiring care and support, and enable them to live a good quality life, which I've continued to support in terms of innovation and a number of platforms. But also, more importantly, I also speak today as someone who's lived this journey with my own family as well. My grandmother lived with dementia until she passed. and working alongside her on that path and seeing the effect it had on her and our entire family opened my eyes personally to the challenges, but also the possibilities when it comes to care. So I'm excited about today's discussion, at least to build awareness more than anything else about what is available in terms of support from a personal experience, but also from a professional capacity as well.
That's perfect. And you just said there, Vishal, that it is a journey that the entire family is taken on rather than individuals. So just on that, I just want an acknowledgement today that any information that we're sharing today is for awareness and from Vishal and Sarita's personal experience. So for professional advice, please do consult a healthcare provider. But we do acknowledge that most of you listening today are likely to or are probably in that journey together. So we hope, seriously hope, sincerely that this will be helpful to you. Okay, so Sarita, can I ask you to share the moment you realized that you needed additional care support for your children?
So, Shilpa, to be honest, I didn't. I was too busy with two children and being a mother and getting on with our lives. But one day, Vishali's SENCO, meaning the Special Education Needs Coordinator, stopped me and asked me if I had thought of having a carer for Vishali because again, sorry, I forgot to explain to people earlier that Vaishali and Ronak both have got the same condition, but Vaishali's needs were more than Ronak. Ronak was more independent. So for till about last 5, 6, 7 years, we've only used Ronak's help. But of all this time, for 25 years, it's always been Vaishali who's needed the care. So basically, when they stopped me, asked me, immediately my mind started working up. I struggled with a wave of emotions, guilt, self-doubt, and even resentment. I felt like I was failing in my role as a mother and worried that Vishali might feel neglected or not as loved. There was a sense of fear as well. And how would a stranger fit into our lives? Would they truly care for her the way we do? And that brought a lot of thoughts and questions in my mind.
Yeah. So just I know you and I know Vaishali, and obviously that hasn't affected Vaishali in the least bit. I'd like to tell everyone here. So what were some of the first steps you took, and how did that journey shape your experience today?
So, as you said, despite these doubts, we decided to start small with 2 hours after school. The carer would help Vishali with personal care, do a little bit of exercise or walking or standing frame or whatever, and homework if needed. And that's how we started. And Vishali accepted a new person very easily, and it made life so much easier as well.
Yeah. That is top tip, isn't it, really, for
Yes.
parents? Start small. If you're a parent, and you know the person is a child that needs the care, that is really a top tip. Were there any surprises along the way that you can think of that, apart from this top tip, that other parents should be aware of, you think?
Yes, there are many, and I honestly like to share a few, at least 5 or 6, which comes in my head that I think all the parents are, even not only just parents, even family members who are looking for carers or love for their loved ones. I think that they should bear few things in mind as well. So I'd like to share it. one of the first things which I soon realized that accepting support was not only beneficial for me, but also for Vishali and the family as well. So, Ronak and Rajesh as well. One thing which was very, very prominent was that it increased independence for Vishali. With someone new in her routine, she developed more confidence in expressing her needs and also engaging socially. Sometimes we've got this thing that, it's just a parent, mother and daughter, or mother and child, just, dealing with things that, there's no third person to talk to. So she found that third person, and she really took that with stride, and that really made our lives really easier. It was also a new bond and friendship for her. Kara became like a family member. Vaishali saw them as a friend rather than caregiver, making transition smooth and enjoyable as well. Some carers became part of support network for us and offering advice and guidance from what they knew from other clients they had, or even other children they saw. So it was not just one way system. Also, you get information from them as well. One of the things which I found, which was very, very useful, is because we had carers from a professional care agency, that gave a lot of peace of mind. It meant that the carers are fully vetted, they're DBS checked, so you don't get any Tom, Dick and Harry coming into your house, right? So, and they're also trained, so they are trained to do manual handling, medication, all sorts of things. They've got trained persons coming to you according to your needs. And also they are aware of safeguarding issues, which I think is very important. Especially, you sometimes you just go blindly and have people coming to your house. You don't realize what is happening, and are they aware of all these things? So that they understood how to handle different situations with professionalism and compassion as well. And continuity of care was put in place. So say if a regular carer was off sick or on holiday, they had a replacement. They sent another person. So, your continuity of care is not disturbed. And also, there are few people trained. So it's not just one person you rely on. There are few people, in place. And that makes very easier for us to have a routine in our life as well, right? So, what, as a mother, you would think that your time, there's never any spare time, right? So that few hours which was looked after for Vishali was so important that gave me free time to focus on other responsibilities, on Ronak, on other things which the house need, in the house you have to get on with. It really made that, we spent quality time with Ronak and get on with his things as well. Yeah, so that was, I think, sometimes we don't realize it, that till we try it out, that 2 hours was, wow, made a big difference. And last point, which I think is important, is that it was emotional relief and peace of mind. The guilt which I felt initially faded as I saw how much happier and more comfortable Vishali was. It was not just Vishali, as well Ronak started understanding that, a third person is in the house. So if he needed something, she would just go and help him, or, he would even keep an eye, thinking, oh, this is something different, she's learning. I need to learn that as well. So that, it was, to me, it was chapter which, was started with lot of doubts, lot of questions, but seriously, accepting help didn't mean I was failing. It meant I was making the best decision for all of us. And it was more important that Vishali had someone she could talk to, and she could learn from them as well, and not rely on us as parents. One of the things which the Senko had told me, that can you imagine when you are either ill or not around, what's going to happen? And that really, really made me understand that seriously, we don't know what is next round the corner for all of us. So it is important to prepare for whoever needs the care, that at least there is somebody that you can rely. So I can only just say, recently, 2 weeks back, Vishali was admitted in hospital. Now at the same time, Rajesh was in another hospital, and Ronak was at home. So if I didn't have a trained carer at home, where would I stay? I wouldn't be able to be in all three places at one go. And that really made a big difference. So that's my journey.
Wow, Sarita, there's a lot in there to unpack. But I think we all, whether it's care or any kind of help, especially women in the house, sorry, with Vishal, that's not to say men don't need this also, but any kind of help we get, that we tend to do the other work. Sometimes we just need to say, okay, this help is for me. And so I also need time out. But apart from that, the one thing I found really interesting that I didn't even think about was that Vaishali would be happier with it. We're always thinking of them, aren't we, when we're looking at any kind of caregiving, whoever it may be. We're thinking of the people that need the care. And I was pleasantly surprised that actually, and now you think about it, everybody who needs care would rather have somebody, I guess, who is independent of the family, because they don't want to be a burden almost on the family. So Vaishali's journey was slightly different because she was younger, and it was just nice to have another person in her life. But actually, for adults and older people that need care, it's also quite good, I suppose, in a similar vein, to have a carer, not just for the person that's doing the caring, but for the person that's being cared of, in a roundabout way, if you see what I mean. Anyway, that's enough talking from me. I don't really know much else about care. So I would like Vishal to come in. Vishal, care can vary greatly. So we've talked about Sarita's kids. You've talked about your grandma. People have mums, dads, everyone who needs care. Could you walk us through the different types of care available? Assisted living, respite, residential, there's tons of them. These are just ones that I have come across. Would you be able to walk us through those different types of care, please?
Yeah, no, most certainly. And you're right, actually. It's interesting, actually, because I just wanted to acknowledge firstly Sarita Ben's just sharing her journey, because actually that's a real powerful sort of story that I'm sure all of us have really learned a lot from as well. There's so many similarities when you think of it in terms of the emotions in particular. When we talk about the emotional element of it, I think that word that you used in terms of guilt, really creeps in quite consciously. And I know at times we think of that guilt maybe being more prevalent in a culture where extended families feel that they need to always look after the family. But actually, I just wanted to make sure the fact that actually that guilt is everywhere. It's a human nature, because I see that in other communities and other cultures as well. That feeling of guilt is really powerful. Well, it is there and it's unspoken. But remember, the truth is that when you're failing, everyone feels that they're failing in that regard. But actually, by seeking support, you're not failing in any way. In fact, actually, as you mentioned there, ultimately by lifting, even thinking about the skill set that you require to support someone, right? We as family members may have the best heart and intention in there, completely heart, but actually having the skill set to support someone. And that's kind of the journey that we felt with our grandmother, that to try to support someone dealing with dementia requires a different skill set, different understanding of how to actually manage some of those behaviors and challenges, and things that we find very frustrating because we can't care for that person the same way that we wanted to. But you realize very quickly that actually, by getting that care, you're actually doing something incredibly brilliant and beautiful for that individual who's receiving it, because they're getting the right qualities of care, support, etc. And this is sort of where that transcends into sort of not only thinking about yourself, but also the family as well, because the moments that you want to live and have with your loved one, you don't want them to be sort of plagued with just this all continuous stress and pressure of caregiving, or feeling that you're in that process. Hence, actually giving that care and support means that you can have those magic moments as well. And this is why actually the journey, when you mentioned Secretary Ben, that actually start small, actually the options available for care are quite vast. Actually, they can be quite expansive. And sometimes when we think of care, we automatically think straight away, particularly for most people, think of care home straight away, especially with their older loved ones that they're thinking about. When they think of care, that automatically resonates with care home. But actually, you can start off in terms of care actually from a more informal point. There's many touch points actually. So when you talk about informal care, even just that process of getting some help around you and help supporting, you may actually find that comes not even from anywhere, but from your community or your friendships that you have. You might find actually that there may be someone there that you can draw upon, which can at least give you some support, or may have some sort of understanding, or have a different relationship with that loved one that they can actually come in. So you find that actually starting point sometimes comes even closer than even going too far, where you actually can find that within your community, or within even the friendships that you have and the family, the wider family. But even then, before even considering any sort of professional care, there are many volunteer groups out there as well. So there's actually a lot of charities that actually try and help you and guide you through your care journey. So particularly, for example, if you're thinking about older loved ones that you're trying to support, there's Age UK, there's in fact ones supporting specifically for dementia, Alzheimer's Society. If you go for those younger adults that have learning disabilities, there's actually, charities like Mind and MenCap, and then there's, HFT. These are all voluntary charitable organizations that are really there to try and help support not only the individual, but also the families as well. And you find that actually a lot of them have peer-to-peer or peer group supports, etc., like these peer support groups where others that are effectively in the same situation, you build a community around that, and you can actually help each other and support each other in that regard. There's also, those charities also provide a bit of training as well. They actually give a sort of voluntary, sort of, you can either do paid, some are paid because they're charities as well, but others are sort of free services, which can at least help you navigate that care journey better. So you can get a little bit of training, a little bit of understanding, even the wider family can get that. When you're thinking about dementia, for example, Alzheimer's Society have a program called Dementia Friends, which is actually a kind of a dementia awareness training, which actually means that anyone in the community can become a friend, even within your family or the wider circles. But with that understanding, you can actually help and support that person in a way that you probably couldn't because you didn't have that awareness before. So I would always look, even initially, that maybe even those charities could be the right place to starting point, just to get a bit more information, get part of that peer group maybe that of others living and with the same situation to you, and also maybe access some of that training that's available as well. But at the same time, when you feel that actually there needs to be something a bit more formal in terms of care, and like Sarah Ben has shared, where there was an opportunity to maybe bring someone in. There are again different layers in which we can look at that sort of care. So what was being described there and similar situation is where you have a formal community-based service. So you can actually have carers that come into your own home and help you and support you in your own home. Now, those that are effectively younger adults, for example, you may not be necessarily housebound. Actually, what you want to do is have some support to assisted daily living, and also help sort of the challenge that you have with young adults, for example, is the fact that when you move from children's services, which is very institutionalized, it's all wrapped around education, you have really comfort, cotton wool services. The minute you become an adult, you automatically move into adult services. And that can be quite daunting because fundamentally you lose those sort of staple pillars that you have around there. And automatically there's an expectation that you should be able to thrive as an adult within the community. Now, that is quite a significant jump. And if a family can't support that properly, then how can we really get that? So where you can get some professional support is actually to help one, to actually help transition someone into adulthood. These, transitional sort of services that you can get where they can help and support you, guide you through that, some of that training of independence, money management, being able to actually see yourself in the community and how you can do that. But also, how could you get a job if you wanted to? Yeah. And how can you actually develop a vocational skill and actually support that and actually be able to be a bit more independent? So from a younger adult perspective, you can get carers that actually come in not only to help you with your personal care needs if you need to, but also help you with those skills based to live a little bit more independent in the adult world when you think about those living with learning disabilities or others. For older people, obviously providing care at home is really important where they can come in on a couple of reasons and different ways you can do that as well. You can have sort of hourly care where you can come in and basically for a few hours in the day. Sometimes that's supported by local authority contracts, for example, where you have funding by local authority and they may be shorter visits but more frequent visits throughout the day. But otherwise, you can actually get some private carers come in that can just maybe spend more extended time, will not only help you with your support at home in terms of personal care and management of just other aspects of life, including your meals, etc., but also then provide companionship and support around that in terms of social needs as well. That can actually be extended quite considerably if you need more than just a few hours in the day, but you actually need 24-hour support, particularly if there's a concern around mobility, moving and handling throughout the night, etc. For example, you can move to either long days for day-long shifts to night-long shifts, or actually think about 24-hour care, which is called live-in care, effectively. And that live-in care is where if you have the facility available, you can have someone physically live in there with you. Now, more than likely, to have just one person doing 24 hours a day is really difficult. So you may have two carers that will be running sort of side by side, maybe even three, depending on the way that they set up. But at least what you do get is the comfort of knowing that someone's always within the house and they provide wraparound care accordingly. The truth is, though, sometimes the home environment isn't the most suitable place for everyone because you find that actually this home setup doesn't really allow you to have the best support for mobility issues, for example, or even just that navigation, for example, if you go further down the journey and, for example, advanced dementia, etc. And when the actual home environment becomes isolated, and for example, in some cases, a lot of people live by themselves, and therefore there's no other companionship really there apart from your carer, and actually having that environment where really that social isolation comes as well. Then actually thinking about the other ways of care is actually where you go into more residential care. And residential care have a few strands as well. So one is actually something called sheltered accommodation. Sheltered accommodation is basically you still have your independent living, but actually what you are is part of a community where you have 24-hour warden services. So alongside having care maybe coming into you in and out, you also have the comfort and peace of mind that there will always be some warden services around the community as well in which you live. So there's some safety and security around that, so you can always call upon someone when needed. They may not provide constant, other services, but just warden in that regard. That can move then into something which is called sort of housing with care, which is really a bit more sort of elaborate in terms of the kind of services you can get, where you can actually also have some hospitality services on site. They can actually have areas where they can have some community settings where they have group activities come together. They may be somewhere where they provide meals. For example, they have actually a restaurant type services within that community as well. But on top of that, you also have, assistance in other areas such as housekeeping, cleaning, all those sort of things, which you can actually get alongside that. But then when you feel that actually more than that is required and actually where you really need is really 24-hour care, particularly because you have more acute needs, then obviously then you can also move into what is a care home. And if you think about care homes right now, I know most people when they think of care homes, and unfortunately there's been a lot of negative press around care homes, which is actually clouding the real reality of what care homes have become now. Care homes now have really transcended to become these beautiful places where you can really develop a brilliant quality of life and have the right skill set of people around you that can not only ensure that you have purposeful living because you can maintain the hobbies and activities that you've always had, but also have a community around you that you can build friendships again and build community feel and have their wraparound care. And most care homes now are all becoming modernized as much as they can. They'll have really lovely facilities in terms of ensuite services. You have your own bedroom, you have all these other aspects, and some actually have gone really to an extreme where you have lovely hair salons, therapy services, spa services, you have hydrotherapy on the side, you can have bistros, you can have lots of things. So they've actually really gone quite far as we go. But what you do get there is also some sort of residential care or nursing care as well. So if you have nursing needs and you need nurse support at all times, then actually there will always be that nursing support there as well. And these care homes actually, to get an entry point sometimes into care and understanding what care is about, there is actually an opportunity where you could use those care homes, and they do offer this a lot, called respite care. And respite care is really, one, to give respite to the individual, but more so to give respite to the family caring for that person as well. So it's an opportunity where for a few weeks, maybe, or even a few days, where you move away from the home style where you're in, and you can actually you sort of live within the care environment or care home for a little while, where you get the 24-hour wraparound care. And it won't be a long-term stay, it's like a short-term stay. But actually what it also is an introduction to care as well. So if, for example, there's some apprehension as to what care might be like, actually a respite sort of placement gives you a real opportunity to understand what care is like and whether it's suitable for you, whether it's the right care home as well. But also gives that break, which is so important, which Sarah Ben really highlighted, was the fact that when you have those pressures, even for a break for the family is really important, but also a break for that individual to have a different sort of perspective and different environment as well. So respite is another area where you can actually look in terms of care.
Sorry, Vishal.
Yeah.
I just want to segue because somebody's put a question on there for me,
yes.
which is perfect. I just want to bring it in now. By the way, before I go into the question for the rest of the audience, please do put your questions in. If we're not able to answer them here, time permitting and whatever, please email them again because we won't know who's asking these questions to our EN inbox, which is en@oshwal.org, and we will endeavor to come back to you, obviously with Vishal's help, at some point. So, Vishal, back to this. The question is, how would someone look for respite care as an option for a short break? So, obviously, this is not to check out the care home, maybe, but as a short break, if somebody wants to, can you kind of go over it? In a few words, please?
Yeah, so there's actually a couple of options here as well for respite care. Now, I'm going to talk about it from both from a residential care perspective, but also from a different perspective. So let me take the different perspective first. There is also another scheme called Shared Lives Program. I don't know if anyone's come across it, but what it is effectively an opportunity where there are trained carers that can actually be registered with the local authority as well as others, where they can actually offer the opportunity for people to come and spend time with them within their own home settings. So this is one opportunity where you basically are living with the carer in their home. And there's an opportunity where you can either do that as a short break in the day. For example, they could just go for a few hours in the day, or they could go for overnight, or they could actually stay there long term as well, for example. But what it is the program where the carers themselves are trained, they're qualified, they've been vetted, but they also share lives effectively. What the whole purpose is that they're sharing the lives of each other and sharing their accommodation. So you'd have to check whether the local authority, I mean, the program is generally available across all local authorities settings, but how available it is depends on how much support is being given by that service. The other option, obviously, in terms of respite, is also day respite. So day respite is where you actually have an opportunity to go for just day services. So now we find that actually for some of us, for a short period of time, we know that the minute that we have to care for someone, we're also having to also potentially give up something as well. So for example, if you are working, you may have to sometimes to be a full-time carer, give up the work that you're doing. But if there's an opportunity maybe where you find there's activities which allow you to at least get some part-time work, or maybe we change your work hours so that you can actually have continued work, but also know that they're part of a supported system. You can actually have something called day services, which again, some of them are voluntary led. So you have, for example, Age UK run a number of them voluntary, but some are actually within care homes as well. And they actually provide care services, day services, and as well as there's other charitable groups that provide day activities rather than in a setting, they create programs of activities. So for younger adults, it's incredible because I've seen some people actually go on archery courses or go off and go onto a farm. We have many farm services where you learn practical skills alongside that, but you have the whole day as a respite around that. So day services is one short sort of daily thing you can either do every day or just periodic days if there's an opportunity. When you want sort of like a week away, for example, or maybe a couple of weeks of respite, this is where residential really does help a little bit in that. And most care homes will largely have an opportunity to have a discussion about respite care. So even if you know of a care home close to you or nearby to you, more than anything, even if you knocked on the door and talked about respite care, they will more than likely say that, yes, let's talk about it because we'd love to bring it. If they have the room availability, we'd love to think about it. Some of them actually actively keep some rooms available for just continuous short-term stay. And there, where you have is they can dictate how long that really is, but you can go and actually obviously place someone loved one within that care home for 6 to 7 days or even longer, and it gives you that opportunity to have a break. And that means that they don't have to move too far from where they're living. They can stay within the community that they are, also get used to and understand that 24-hour care, wraparound care that's happening at care homes and get used to it. There are also, just to give you a further option, is that actually some organizations actually create something called retreats. And this is actually more an opportunity for those that are, want to, that respite is really for the individual as well, is to actually go away and have a different environment. And there's something, for example, even those living with dementia have these as well. For example, there's an organization called Dementia Adventure, where they actually create these wonderful sort of escapes, really like week-long, fully supported opportunities to go in a different environment and doing some sort of different adventure that you haven't done before, and still have it very supported as well. And a lot of these things you can find definitely if you search on Google, even if you write respite care in Google, a lot of things, and you even put your postcode in there, a lot of things will come up within your area in terms of who offer respite care. But also there's a number of sort of marketplace aggregators. These are sort of platforms which actually basically aggregate all the services on there. So you can search by different filters where you can actually search for care homes or care services or even domiciliary care on these providers. And then you can get a lot of information there. And they're also rated on there as well. So you can see the ratings and feedback on them. So some of the platforms there are, there's carehome.co.uk. There's Lottie, Lottie.co.uk. There's another one called Automina. There's Care Sourcer. There's for home care. There's homecare.co.uk. These are great platforms that are using technology to basically make a directory where you can actually search for care a lot easier as well. And in most cases, if you go through an opportunity to get that, you can also talk to if you are getting funded by local authority, the local authority can help and support you to get that respite care, find the place for you as well. And they can also find, help navigate that. So even if you don't want to find it yourself, definitely go through the person that may be talking to you in the adult social service or even children's services about, if I need some respite care, where can you navigate me to as well? And then we can give you that service as well.
Wow, so that's a huge amount of information. Thank you so much, Vishal. I hope the audience has got some of those links, actually, some of those websites, because they seem really useful. So obviously, as you said, there's a huge amount of stuff out there. Is there like top tips you could give for families to figure out which option best suits their situation? Or like you said, you just walk into some of the closest places to you and ask them. It's a bit of a minefield, right? With the options come choices, and the more choices there, the I think the more confusing it is.
I know Sarita Ben can also answer in terms of her own experience around that perspective as well. But before Sarita Ben to give her own experience, but unfortunately, the UK setup is a little bit confusing in that regard, and I do feel for that as well. Not only having gone through that myself with our family, but also just generally knowing it, and that's a mission of mine per se, to actually try and make that navigation a lot better and signposting. So that is something that will hopefully evolve. But generally, what you tend to find is that you tend to, first of all, first of all, you want to find out obviously, if there is a perspective of need required, generally that's come from some sort of health assessment of some sort. You've kind of gone through a journey yourself. And normally the first point of call is your GP, for example. So your GP is generally a great perspective to give some advice and give some signposting to. But then you tend to work towards at least using the services that local authorities provide. Because what you do go through there is you get a needs assessment done on that basis for that individual and help and support. I would always say that if you know that there's some support required, that it hasn't come from some sort of trauma or some sort of hospital admission. Going to your GP, but also getting to work with the social services that are there, the local authority services that are there, the social services, they are a really great point because their whole role is actually there to support you and to find the right information and right signposting for you. So they will do the needs assessment, they'll find what you need, and also help navigate that journey first and foremost. And depending on the family circumstance, because you can be as involved or less involved as you can. If you don't have the support, then you might need more support externally. But if as a family you say that you want to actually still continue and support in the way they are, but we just need support in these areas, then you can navigate that from that basis as well. So those 2 points are probably the first starting points, I would say, to give you the right signposting. And then after that, there are many resources that we can always signpost you. They can give you those signposts, but also, as I mentioned, there are a number of websites that can give you that information first and foremost. Sorry, maybe you can give your own personal journey. I don't know if you...
Yeah, so Vishal, yes, for us it started with the SENCO sending and directing it to the social services. So social services.
Sorry, Sarita, 1 minute. I just wondered if you could explain SENCO, like what does that stand for? Because
Sorry.
I would not have heard of it. So I think a
Okay.
lot of people would.
So when children are in school, I don't know now, but before it used to be called the special education needs coordinator.
Okay, right.
Yeah, so
Got it.
how that's called SENCO. I think now it's a little bit different, but I'm not sure. I'm going back
Okay.
25 years back, right? So yeah, it's they who actually put the word to the social services, and social services came to me and really assessed everything and looked at everything. Oh, you have to be open and say, look, this is where I need help, and please guide us into the right direction. And they do, and they have got agencies as well, and also in terms of funding as well. They look at every they do means test and look at everything and work from there. Whether we need to pay towards it or they will pay for it. But the agencies which they show is what they are working with. So they provide you with a couple of agencies' names, and then from there you look into the carers and see how it works. And basically, it's not difficult as long as you are aware of what you want and what you need help with.
Okay, that makes sense. Total sense. Sarita, while I have you on the mic here, we have one question. If it's, feel free to say it's too difficult to answer in this time. But one of the first questions we got from the audience today is, how do you vet your carer? They're requesting carer help, but because of their child's disabilities are hidden, they're getting repeatedly rejected by social services. Now, that's a different question to how you vet it. I get that. But did you need to ever vet your carer, and how would you have done it?
So I personally didn't need to, because as I said, the care agency who provide the facility and the carers, they actually do the DBS checks and everything.
Okay.
So it's actually they who go through all the legal things which they need to before they hire any carers. And then
Right.
once they hire them, they also train them. They have to go through training processes.
Okay.
And even on regular basis, they have to sit and do exams as well. So
Okay.
medical exams and moving and handling training again, and answering questions and everything. Yeah. So I don't have to do any on that one.
Yeah. So I guess that's the advantage you were saying of professional care agencies, is that they come vetted. You don't have to vet them. I don't know if there is an answer to, because your child has got hidden disabilities, you are being repeatedly rejected by social services. You obviously wouldn't have had that issue, Sarita. Vishal, are you aware of anything there that we could answer?
So normally, I mean, if there was some sort of diagnosis around a hidden disability, there generally is some sort of care pathway that's already been started.
Right.
That generally comes from some sort of assessment that's been done around that. And I would always use the voice of that assessment journey as much as possible when talking even with social services. So, for example, if that need has been there and hidden and has been assessed and been diagnosed that there is one in terms of a disability of some sort, then actually that ideally should come forward. And in fact, even the GP should be able to refer that, or any healthcare professional that has actually been part of that should become a strong voice in making sure that you get the right support and care. If we're talking about more on the basis of, for example, of mental health, and actually mental health is something which is very hidden in many cases. And in terms of emotional support, maybe, it's hard to diagnose sometimes in terms of most cases, sometimes you end up becoming just diagnosed around depression, which is not obviously the right trajectory sometimes. Those sort of areas is where you can start utilizing some of the charitable groups and the volunteer groups first as well. They are very well equipped and very well versed in ideas around mental health, where they have more emotional strategies that sort of applied, and they can actually find that level of support, particularly peer group support, that is there that can help navigate that better as well. So as much as you may be knocking on one door, you should also open up some other doors, because they may actually be a better community for you accordingly.
So yeah, that makes sense. So basically, it's the diagnosis that is one of the most important things. When you're choosing a care provider, beyond what Sarita has shared at the moment, what would you consider if you're looking for a carer? What would you consider when selecting a care provider? Are there any specific questions, any red flags that you watch out for? Given that you obviously have to think, you've just been through all the types of cares that's available. So once you've thought of, I need this kind of care, how would you go about considering which one to use?
Is that for Vishal or is?
Yeah, that's for Vishal. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Okay. Yes. Well, look, I mean, I think the reality is that first and foremost, you just find the right sort of, if we're going to go down. So there's two parts, I think, which we discussed here. One was effectively going from a private carer, and one is going to an agency. And I think obviously we've kind of built up a case as to why an agency really works very well. Now, from a private pet carer perspective, what that means is effectively you trying to find your own source of who basically could care and support. And actually that could work quite well, because sometimes what happens in that is that you tend to find those private carers through word of mouth referral. And you actually, find friends that may have had a carer before, or you actually extend that network a little bit, and you find actually there's really lovely people that you can know that if they work really well with that family, that they're kind of my kind of people, and therefore they can really work well here in that community as well. So sometimes it might be a case of just really reaching out to your network if you're looking for a private carer, because you may have heard something around that, and it works really well. The challenge, obviously, with private carers is kind of something that we've kind of highlighted a little bit, is the fact that they may be great for a perspective of that particular family because they have a particular need, but they may not necessarily always be skilled in the area that you want to have the skill set, or you need the skill set for as well. Secondly, is that obviously there is the reality is relying only on one person means that they're always going to have some days where they can't be physically there. One, they need some rest as well, but also they may be away, they may need to go away, or sometimes because they are maybe more transient in terms of their work here, they kind of move away again. So you find that actually it's sometimes a challenge around that, but also you have to be a bit more, you have to have a bit more scrutiny around that. Either you take the fact that the word of recommendation is strong enough that you don't need to do any further checks. But otherwise, you do also need to take upon the responsibility then of how you're going to pay them, how are you going to look at their, background checks. Are they trustworthy within the house? Are they going to be okay within the... So that sometimes is also a bit of a minefield sometimes. But actually, when you go down the professional route, more than likely, you're going to also largely going to be on the basis of trying to find the right skill set of people that can help support that person who you kind of know. So and not all agencies, for example, may necessarily provide support for those living with dementia. Not all agencies will provide support for the younger adults with learning disabilities. So in some ways, you have to filter that a little bit, finding the right agency that actually, first of all, promotes the fact that they can support those services. So that's a first sort of stepping stone. Second thing is that actually all these services, particularly professional services, they are actually regulated services. So they're fundamentally, you have to have a license effectively to operate as a care provider. That is given by our regulator, which is currently called the CQC, Care Quality Commission. Now, the Care Quality Commission also provide the same governance and regulatory responsibility across pharmacies and GPs and hospitals now, etc. But their main basis of constant inspections has always been around social care, to be fair. But what they do is they fundamentally have to inspect the service and continuously monitor the one that they are meeting the requirements that are required by law, but also that they are continuing to provide a good quality service. And the inspection service is supposed to happen regularly. Now, CQC is going through a bit of a flux themselves right now because they've had a lot of change in administration and issues there. You might find on certain things. So if you go to their website, which is www.cqc.org.uk, and you find a service provider on there, you will find that maybe their inspection is recent or not recent, but they will be inspected. And that inspection is a really good report because it gives you a rating on there. It tells you whether overall and in certain areas they have to meet certain criteria to be judged as being either excellent and outstanding quality, or they might be good, or they may require some improvement, etc. And what you really want to veer towards, obviously, is the better the rating, obviously, the more likely they're going to be a good service because they've been inspected on that basis as well. And what that means fundamentally when they have an overall good rating is that as an agency, they continue to invest in training, they continue to support their carers as best as they can, they look after them as best as they can, they provide very honest and open, transparent conversations with the families, and they report really regularly. They have good training around medicine management, they support, they have a good team, just generating quality, etc. So that's always a good starting point when you're looking at a service provider to which one to look. But obviously, some of this also depends on geography in terms of who's closest to us, and also do they meet some of our requirements? When I'm thinking about us, and I know more than likely a question is going to come up around our communities: can they speak our language? Can they, do they understand our dynamics of culture at home? If they are going to help with meal preparations, can they cook food and be vegetarian food, for example, as well? And those sort of questions can also help filter. But being very honest and very candid about this is the fact that unfortunately, we need to promote more people within our community to do this type of work, because actually there aren't as many enough of us in this space. And actually, it's a very rewarding career, and it can be an incredible career, but we don't sometimes push enough of our people, encourage enough of people to take a career. So that's, as a result of that, what has largely happened is that, since COVID in particular, and generally before, there's been a case of international recruitment that's been happening, where there's been a lot of carers on sponsorship licenses, supported by good quality care agencies, have brought a number of people from India, Sri Lanka, and those sorts of locations to come across, which at least helps with certain areas, particularly of language, but also culturally as well, and they're aware as well. So you'll find some agencies that actually specialize specifically in providing carers from these sort of communities and have had good international recruitment in there as well. And most carers, and if language isn't a problem, and if culturally, families can help with food a little bit as well, and it's mainly the personal care needs, and you just want to have a good personality matching, and that's really what is quite important, is that the actual carer and the one that's being supported have a really good match in terms of personality, then it's better to go to agencies and most agencies will do that they provide an option of 1 or 2 or 3 people so that you can try them to see which fits best. And when they do that, obviously, there'll be some filtering before then anyway, based on your needs, to make sure the right skill set matches. But then you at least have some comfort of knowing that you're going to try to see which one matches both the personality of your loved one, but also the personality of the family, and you can get on well with, etc. So that probably helps guide you to find the right best carer. The professional agencies are there, and their role is really to help you through that process. So at any point when you pick up the phone and you get a care coordinator or someone to speak to, they will ask you the best questions, they will do the needs assessment, they'll come and support you in that decision making, and they'll guide you through the whole process, and so that you don't have to feel flustered, because they'll give you that support accordingly.
Yeah, and I think it's important that you be honest, I guess, when they're asking you those questions.
Correct.
And as descriptive as you possibly can be, just so that they've got the full picture. There's no point hiding anything, actually, I feel there. Or if you forget, you can always go back to them and say, look, I there's one thing that I've forgotten to say, or something. They sometimes come up with questions, don't they? They come to your home, sometimes they check your living facilities and ask you questions on that. And I think that's nothing to be scared of. You just need to be open and honest about the whole thing, and you'll get the best solution.
Shilpa, can I
Absolutely.
just add on there?
Sure,
Shilpa,
please do.
can I just add on that like when I changed the agency, the coordinator came home and they looked even at Vaishali. They talked to Vaishali and Ronak as well, and
Okay.
and asked them what they want from this help, what sort of person they want and all that. They do make a point that they talk to not just the parents but to even the children who needs that help, and carers coming to work with them. Obviously they have to be very accommodating as well. So yeah, the care agencies do provide a lot of facilities as well.
Okay, that's perfect. Thanks. We have another question, and Vishali went through a whole way, like in quite good detail, about how to look for how to look for the care option. Somebody's just put in there that they would be interested in finding out more on care options for someone who wants to live independently, including assisted or supported living. What you've described, would that work for this kind of care option, or do you have anything further you can advise on that?
Yeah, so actually, what is quite encouraging at the moment is that there is more development happening now in the independent living side of things, which is what I mentioned about sheltered accommodation, which is kind of warden services. Now, before they've become quite outdated in some cases because they were quite old basic schemes where fundamentally, largely local authorities try to sort of park older people to make sure they have safety and security. Now there are actually a huge number of great options because the developers have come in and developed some really lovely schemes. The terminology changes quite a bit for these sort of schemes, so it's just to be aware of that. So a lot of the time, you maybe actually what you're trying to search is sometimes for a retirement community. Now, retirement has become more of a standard terminology for this sort of area of living, and the traditional retirement community means that actually it's just literally apartments within a secure block, but it's actually age restricted. So you only over a certain age can live within that in that
Yeah.
environment. But now that's been expanded quite a bit because everyone's needs change and you need care. So there's a terminology called housing with care that's come across quite a bit as well. So when you're searching, you could also look for housing with care. But then there's also assisted living. So you mentioned assisted living as well. And sometimes, most cases, they tend to use assisted living terminology when there is some independent living close by, even to a care home, for example. So that you actually can have the blended support of care services that actually help and assist also in the living that is there. All terminologies are kind of the same, where actually what we're trying to do is fundamentally keep people more independent within their own homes, have their own space, but also have basically the support of care that can come on site or within the facility itself. Now, some of the websites that I mentioned actually do cover retirement communities as well. So, for example, Lottie.org, which is one of the websites I mentioned, they also cover a number of services around retirement communities or housing with care, effectively. There is also, if you wanted to go on to, when I mentioned there's some bodies that effectively represent a number of the services that are around that. And one body is called ARCO, which talks about, effectively it's an organization that fundamentally brings a lot of the retirement communities together. And there are a lot of listings there of sort of assisted living communities, particularly around there. In those spaces. And even if you just do a basic Google search, you'll find a lot of these, when you just write those terms, which I mentioned, retirement community or assisted living or housing with care, or even there's one more, which is integrated retirement communities. You'll find that those are all basically to do with accommodation for older people that effectively want to live independently and actually can have care on top. Now, for younger adults, you can have also that same option, which is called supported living, fundamentally. So that's another terminology called supported living, which are actually smaller houses, fundamentally, where you actually can, as a young adult, you can live within a community as if it was, you talk about HMOs, if you may have come across that, where you have multiple
Yeah.
people living in a house. Similar sort of setups are there where you have sort of supported living schemes where there are smaller house units which have 3 to 4 or 5 people even living in them. They all live independently within their own spaces in the sense that they will probably have their bedroom and en suites and maybe a shared kitchen facilities and community. So it feels like a house environment, and they have to sort of get used to living within the house environment as an adult. But they, on top of that, they have carers support workers living there as well. And the support workers basically provide support in every aspect that you would expect in normal care. Also gives that opportunity to help build their sort of technical and daily living skills, and then also support them in terms of sort of vocational training. And they will help and actually find vocational work as well. So these sort of schemes are brilliant. And there's many providers out there that actually do that as well. And again, if you search up supported living schemes on Google, or even if you look on CQC's website for supported living schemes, even on those platforms, you'll find them. There are, I mean, some large providers have almost sometimes as many as 550 units, for example, that are all supported in this. So some big brands, but also some very localized some providers as well that have the one unit within there. And you might more than likely to find within every community there is always some sort of supported living scheme that you may not even know that's on your road. There's one of those supported living schemes that are there. But they're all, again, regulated services. They all are sort of licensed with CQC and regulated by CQC, so you can look at that as well.
Okay, perfect. That's a perfect answer to answer the next question we had. Thank you. And that was about people who need, young people who need assistance. Now, time is ticking on. I was wondering, is there any way, now funding is a huge topic in itself, and is there any way you can just summarize quickly for us the main ways care can be funded, and any steps people should be aware of when they're exploring their options?
Yeah, would you like me to take that? So I'll take
Yes,
that.
Vishal, please.
So
Yeah,
yes, so I mean, funding is obviously a concern that everyone always has around
yeah,
care.
yeah.
Uh, Unlike the National Health Service, where you have free at point of use, or the health services are all funded, and you'll always get that free at point of use. Social care is not that. Social care actually sits outside of that, and in the context that the majority of funding goes through pathways that largely, if you need some support and assistance, will come through local authority funding. And the local authority funding is only really accessible through something called a means test. And a means test is basically a financial assessment. So you have a needs assessment, which is basically about what needs are there to support that individual to best, thrive and have the best quality of life. But then you have a means test, which is to say that actually, how should we support you financially in that journey? Now, a means test basically takes on board the actual individual who's having the care supported is the one that would be means tested. In children's services, it's slightly different because they are dependent of the family. I know Sarita has probably gone through that journey herself in terms of that means test, because it'll be an assessment of the family circumstances. But when you go into adult services, it's an assessment of the adult, that particular individual. And what a means test does is it takes some count of all your financial circumstances to see whether you meet a certain criteria. And that criteria threshold is actually quite low, I must admit. So let me explain what that is. So in England, there's actually differences in the nations. So because we have devolved governments, effectively, Scotland, England, and Wales operate slightly differently. So from England's perspective, if the individual, now if you're talking of, if the individual's assets, so the entire capital wealth that they have and income that they have generated, etc., is below £23,250, £23,250, then they are likely to get some form of support or be assessed to have some sort of support from a local authority. However, if you want full support from the local authority, then your entire sort of capital base and assets, etc., need to fall below £14,250. If you're in between 14,250 and 23,250, then you'll get some assistance, but there'll be also an expectation for some contribution to come in as well. So there'll be some sort of part payment or some sort of contribution in there. The minute you go above 23,250, you are considered to be a self-payer. So that means even if you're £1 over, £2 over, you are entirely a self-payer. Now, when you talk about what is assessed in that process, actually, if it's for home care, if the care is going to be provided within the home, then the property in which you're living in doesn't get assessed as part of that assessment, because it's actually about everything else, because you're actually providing the accommodation yourself. But if you move into a care home or a care, some sort of residential care, then the place that you're living in, your property that you're living in, is also part and parcel of that 23,250 assessment. Now you can think about that quickly, that if you are owning your own home, then automatically, more than likely, you are going to be very much a self-payer. So majority of people genuinely are self-payers in social care. But when you think about younger adults that are moving from children's services into adult services, you can see why majority of learning disability support is actually given from local authority funding, because more than likely they will not have built up their own capital base or assets, etc., at that time. So therefore, they will, from a means testing perspective, they more than likely will get the support that they need. And the reason there is variance, I mean, obviously, because I mentioned, just to highlight the variance, I don't know if there are any people on this webinar from Scotland or Wales, but just to give you an indication, Scotland is probably the most supportive out of everything. That threshold for which we talked about in Scotland is 32,750, so it's higher. And you get partial funding from a different threshold, which is a little bit higher as well. But what they do provide is that from the care element, I'm not talking about necessarily the residential part of it or the other services around housekeeping, etc. From the care perspective, everyone gets that for free. So everyone gets free care in personal care in Wales is like different. Their asset threshold is even higher. It's 50,000 in Wales for residential care, that is, and for non-residential care, it's 24,000. So there are some variants, and these, I'll be honest with you, these are figures that are currently static, knowing the direction in which we could expect in terms of the fact that social care is still an area that needs real significant funding. More than likely, this may change over time. There was a report, a few years back, the Dillon report suggesting there may be a cap on fees, but that's been kicked down the can and maybe dismissed at the moment, so there's no real funding around that. But I would say that most of the care, if you fall with outside of those brackets, you're going to be paying it from out of your own pocket.
Michelle, that's extremely clear. I mean, there's nothing that's been left out of that explanation. Thank you so much.
There is one more explanation, though.
Yes, do tell.
Which I haven't given yet. So there is two other areas where you need to think about for funding as well. So one is that there is something called NHS Continuing Healthcare, which is CHC.
Oh, yes.
CHC is actually a process that you need to go through. It is where the person's needs are primary medical. And so you always know that there is a medical element to their care that is required, and it's ongoing and it's continuing. It's going to be there for a right time. And in most cases, that might be a case where it's even potentially terminal in terms of, your process of medical need that you have regards to that. If you get assessed through that, now the assessment process of that is quite rigorous. First of all, the GP has to do an assessment, then he goes through the continuing care healthcare assessment process, and it is significant assessment that has to happen. And at the end of that, if you do tick all the boxes and you get it, then continuing healthcare means that all your care needs will then be funded by NHS. So even if you move into a residential care environment, there may be some negotiation in terms of a cap for what that it is. So if you want to go to the bells and whistles, the really high-end care home, there may be a question that you may have to top up on top of that. But otherwise, most cases is that if you get continuing healthcare, then all your care needs will be funded by the NHS. But as I said, it is quite a rigorous process. In most cases, it's unlikely that you get it, for example. But there is at least one thing that is there, that they are committed to giving you a response within 28 days. So if you go through the process, within 28 days, you have a response accordingly. The third element, which I was going to mention around funding, is the fact that I mentioned this about before as well, but there is charitable support as well. So there are many charities that actually are funded on the basis of providing support for those that need some assistance around paying for their care needs. And there are lots of charities that either might focus on specific conditions because they wanted help on specific areas of it, or they may be more broad brush. Some are actually charities that only want to help because they're based around this, but they have to help their own community because they're actually within that remit, they have to support that community. There may be actually providers out there. There are charitable voluntary sector providers that actually they're actually owned by charities, where they charity themselves support partially or some of the cost or entire cost as well of care. So it is also worthwhile considering when you look at care homes or care services that if they're owned by a charity, more than likely they could also, if you meet certain of their criteria, they could even support you financially as well.
Wow, never thought of that. That's amazing. Thank you so much for that. I'm just going to give you a break. You've been talking a lot. It's all been very useful, but I'm sure you can just um, do with a break. Sarita, would you have one final tip or piece of advice for families currently exploring care options? I mean, you've given us loads, but do you have something that you haven't said yet that you would like to say to someone who is considering care?
Obviously, Vishal has given a lot of information today, so I think they need to just read, listen, and find out more information about this. All I'd like to highlight and say is that carers are not just extra hands. They are trained professionals who enhance the quality of life for both children and parents. Accepting help doesn't make us any less of a parent. It allows us to be more present, more rested, and more effective in our role. So, for anyone considering a carer, I encourage you to explore your options. It's not about giving up your responsibilities. It is about making sure you and your child get the best support possible, and someone who knows your child better than other family members when it in crisis or when your health issues arises, you can rely on. And that's all I would say. And it does make you feel that there's a little bit of privacy going away from your family, right? Because there's somebody outside. And sometimes not all carers are right for your loved ones, but you have to give that time, you have to give that opportunity, and you have to follow your heart, but does make your life a lot easier. That's all.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Vishal, do you have one last tip for anybody listening here today?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would just say is that in most cases, people don't really consider care until it's at a crisis point. And I know for a fact that most people only look at it when all of a sudden there's been an incident, a trauma, or someone's gone into hospital, or you got to breaking point effectively. And actually, when you think about the kind of decisions you make when you're in that situation, they're not always going to be the most rational. They're not going to be the most well thought out. They're not going to be the most well informed, to be honest, because you are in a crisis situation. And what I would say is that actually the one thing I would really encourage everyone to do is take interest in this topic as much as early as possible. Even if you don't think you need care right now, become aware. Just become aware of everything that's around this. This webinar is really great for that. There's more information externally as well about that. And really talk to people even as well that have had care and just understand their stories. Because at some point, when it does become a situation where you need that support, you at least make well-informed decisions in a calm, collected manner that is more planned than in a situation where it's at crisis. And in that regard, I mean, there's one thing which I mean, I also put a part of part of a board of an organization that really champions social care a lot. And one thing which we do is a program called Care Home Open Week. And Care Home Open Week really is an opportunity for us to really shine a spotlight on care homes that are effectively at the heart of all communities. You'll find a care home pretty much in every community across the country, and you may not be necessarily aware of that. And this week, which happens this year, is going to happen between the 16th of June to the 22nd of June, is really an opportunity where all care homes across the country will register themselves onto a website, which is championingsocialcare.org, championing social care. And if you look on there, there'll be a map, but you'll find care homes are hosting events across the country during that week to really allow public to come in and just see what care's about, see what a care home is and what the life in care homes like. I'm trying to use that. We're all using that as an opportunity also to consider people to try and think of as a career in care as well. But it's a great opportunity even just to go see and view the care homes that are around you and just understand what care is about. So if anything, I would encourage everyone during the week of 16th to the 22nd of June to log on to that website, Championing Social Care, and find your nearest care home and just go visit it and just at least get familiar with what care is about as much as possible. What we want to do is dispel this feeling that care is a taboo subject that we can't talk about. It's one of these sort of subjects that have stigma around it. You know, most of the time we feel that it's because of societal pressure that we feel we can't talk about it. Actually, we want to talk about it more and more openly, because more than likely, we know that 1 in 3 people at some point will get dementia, for example. More than likely, that's going to be within our own family. Someone in our family is definitely going to need some support. So let's talk about it more so that we can support each other more.
Shilpa, can I just add one thing?
Please do.
I strongly, agree with Vishal, and I also say that we need to change our mindsets, especially our elderlies. We all need to realize that when somebody who is elder and your partner has got ill or had a fall and traumatized or whatever, it's you are not even younger, so you accepting those few hours of care will really help you to look after that person, rather than you doing that duty. On top of that, you are also exhausted. So just let's change our mindsets and accept few things in life.
I couldn't agree more, Sarita. And so we've literally talked about, breaking barriers, breaking taboos, and talking about this. I feel that if the person that you're thinking about when you're thinking this is also of sound mind or able to communicate, I think even that conversation should be had with that person as well. So you feel a little bit like, yes, you're doing whatever they wish. In the event, touch wood, not happening, but in the event that care is needed. And also, I just want to emphasize for the audience, Vishal made a really, really good point on careers in care. I think it's, with our population, the aging population that everybody talks about, it's going to be a growing field for those people who are looking at different careers. And of course, I think, without a doubt, it'll be quite, it'll give you back loads. It'll be a very fulfilling career. So please, please do talk about it. Vishal, are you, if we get any queries about that, are you happy to respond to people on that?
Most definitely, yes.
All right.
Mine as well, so for sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you both. I've made you talk loads today. Definitely everybody watching's got their money's worth today. And I can't thank you enough for so openly sharing. This is not easy, Sarita, to share things like this openly within the community as well, and people will be watching. So thank you so much. And Vishal, just your explanations, your advice has been absolutely invaluable, I think. So thank you again so much for doing this for us. And then I'd like to thank everybody who's been watching. We've had loads of questions, so that is absolutely fantastic. I think that helps us guide our conversation. So thank you for putting those out as well. Our Zoom team has been brilliant today, so thank you to the Zoom team. We've got Anish and Ketanbai with us today, so thank you guys for that. Now, one last thing I want to plug on behalf of Enabling Network is we have a disability survey that's on the Oshwal website. If you or anyone you know who has a disability haven't already completed it, please do so. The link is on the OA UK website. And I hope that this webinar has been helpful. And as I said before, if you would like to catch up on it, if you missed some of it, or you would like somebody else to view it, it will be available on the OA UK YouTube channel. It will be there for a very long time. So on that note, good night and have a good rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you.
प्रभुना दर्शन करता
ॐ नमो हरिहन्ताणम्
सिद्ध प्रभुना दर्शन करता
ॐ नमो सिद्धाणम्
आचार्यों ने वंदन करता
ॐ नमो आयर्याणम्
उपाध्याय ने वंदन करता
ॐ नमो उपध्यायाणम्
सर्व साधु ने वंदन करता
नमो लोये सब साहूणम्
सम्यक दर्शन मुझने मर्जो
तेसो पञ्चन मुक्तारो
सम्यक ज्ञान